All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sherry Sims, founder of Black Career Women's Network, and I want to thank you for tuning in to another Career Tip Tuesday. Makita is actually will not be with us today, so you just got me. So if you're just now tuning in, I want to give everybody just a moment to get tuned in. And when you do get here, if you could put in the comments where you are watching from, that would be great. That will let me know, who you are, where you are, and where you are watching from. So where are you watching from? Would love to know that. All right. I'm going to go ahead and talk about today's topic, and this is going to be a juicy one, you all. I have notes, okay, for this one, so I have them on my phone, so I'm going to be talking through these. But we're going to be talking about shifts and drifts in the workplace. And you're probably thinking, what is Sherry talking about with shifts and drifts in the workplace? What I'm talking about specifically is if we are not paying very close attention to our workplace environments, there can be shifts and drifts, and those shifts and drifts can show up in different types of ways, and it can impact it can impact our work, but it also can specifically impact even our job stability as well if we're not paying attention. So I want to give you, I think I have 6 different shifts and drifts I want you to think about. Some of you may have experienced these. Some of you, this is great information to think about. So if you do start to feel a certain way, you can identify it and then maybe become proactive in how you are managing it, or you could just make some decisions on where you are, and if you need to move on, or if you need to start looking to be a part of something different, or maybe whatever that looks like for you. So I'm going to go ahead and break down with the first one, which is the first shift and drift is corporate marginalization. Here's the thing: when it comes to corporate marginalization, this can occur when you can still have a good reputation at work, you can still have a history of great performance, all the things, but you still make it sideline. You still might, for various reasons, it still may happen. So where you see corporate marginalization happens is if there's a restructure, if there is a change in leadership, and if the power dynamics change. This one probably to me is one that a lot of people have experienced the most when it comes to changes in the workplace. Now, individual contributors may not even be maybe recognized or valued like they used to be when these changes happen. Okay, so corporate marginalization is real, and if you're not paying attention, it can happen fairly quickly. So I'm going to go back and add specifically those 3 areas. I'm going to type them in and put them on the screen for you, because I told you I got my notes here for this one, because I know this is going to be a good. This is what was going to be a good one today. So here's the thing. Here's how a shift can happen, and how marginalization can happen with shifts and drifts. I'm going to go ahead and put it back in here. One is restructuring. Okay, restructuring in the workplace can be one. The next one can be leadership changes. And the last one can be power dynamics. All right. Those are going to be the 3 that are the possibilities of how the corporate marginalization can happen. Because what can happen is, once those things change, they might not see the value that you held, because the leaders who were there before are gone now. So you have to really be careful with that. All right. For those of you who are tuning in, please tune in and let me know where you are watching from. All right. The next one is career plateau. Okay, career plateau, I know it seems a little simplified, but what happens with this one, and we all probably have experienced it, and this one's really simple. This is you've gone as far as you can go within the organization. And when you feel that, sometimes we hang on because the salary is good, maybe you have a good reputation, you have flexibility, all of those things, but realistically, you have nowhere else to go. So a career plateau is something you have to consider, and that's how a shift and drift can happen in the workplace when you're not paying attention. I want to go back to this one here, which is organizational drift. Now, this term actually is when you have your specific role and responsibility gradually diminishes over time. okay? Which means that the drift happens because the corporate goals have changed. There's a restructuring, again, a shift in how what the leadership focuses on. That you and your work may have been the initial focus, but now it no longer is. You may have been a key contributor in the past, but now that the work is different, it's not as impactful, or it may not be as relevant, or it may not be as valuable. So you have to remember these things. When we get to the place where we feel like we're on top, or we're doing good, that we're adding value, we're being effective, and we're seeing the results from that, that can change. And so again, an organizational drift can happen very simply even if you have influence. But if your responsibilities, your influence, and in what you do gradually diminish over time, that is a red flag for you to evaluate if you need to make some changes, or if it's still the right place for you to work. So an organizational drift is something that you definitely have to pay attention to. So hello there for you all who are just tuning in. This is something you have to pay attention to. All right. The next one I'm going to talk about is corporate gaslighting. And I know that we talk about gaslighting where we feel like a person's being diminished or devalued, but this is more of where the work you currently do is less valuable, and that despite of your history of how well you've been able to produce and the contributions that you've made, you're being denied the recognition. Your environment now feels uncertain about you. Like, where do I fit in? Where do I fit in with all of those things? And then here's the thing about corporate gaslighting. Corporate gaslighting can impact you as an individual, because you can start to doubt how you perform, your abilities. You might get frustrated because you're like, how do I go from having a solid track record to now, everything I implement, everything I say, I do, no one's listening, no one's giving me credit, no one's really valuing or what I bring to the table, when that didn't used to be the case. So again, corporate gaslighting, you have to look at these things and know when they're going on. And some of you are probably thinking, oh, I didn't know there were terms for this. But yes, they are. So again, thinking about this specifically, and if you're in this position, then you absolutely want to consider what is it that you need to do. And we're going to talk about, I'm going to do a part 2 to the shifts and drifts in the workplace. And we'll talk about, go back and kind of review these. And then in part 2, we're going to come back and talk about what are some of the things you can do. All right, I have a LinkedIn user that says, I feel like I'm actively experiencing corporate gaslighting. Yeah, so that's the thing. And the corporate gaslighting, again, this is where you are made to feel, I told you I have notes on this because I knew today was going to be a heavy topic. This is where you're made to feel less valuable, despite of what you have been able to contribute to the organization. You have a history of success in the organization, but now what you're doing is being minimized. Your accomplishments that you've done over the years have been minimized. You're being denied the recognition for what you do. And now it's in a creative environment for you of uncertainty to question whether you want to be here. So you do have to think about if this is still the right place for me when this is happening. How do you get to a place of gaslighting? Again, it goes back to some of the other things we were talking about specifically. We were talking about the organizational drift and also talking about marginalization. And corporate marginalization kind of goes hand in hand with gaslighting, to be honest. It really does. But the organizational drift is, and I'm going to go back to that. Hi, Evan. Evan says sometimes when there are times when your position is marginalized, it's simply because your position is on the spreadsheet due to your salary. Not that does bring any value. Yes, Evan, that is so true. But with the shifts, in today's topic is about shifts and drifts in the workplace. This isn't specifically around being on paper. These things we're talking about are happen when you know that you have a track record of success, you've been supported in the past, and things are shifting, right? So if your position is on the spreadsheet due to your salary, then it wasn't there initially that way. There has something that has happened that has shifted to now it's just on paper, and then we no longer value it, or we no longer see a purpose for it anymore. So something happened within that corporation that has gotten into that place, because that's initially not how it started. Does that make sense? And that's what this is about. This is not about, this is really about how do you get to this place when someone who has been very successful in the role has a track record of it, and now they're feeling diminished and devalued, no longer supported, all of the things, right? And so I'm glad you brought that up, Evan, because it's a very good point. But it does take there's certain things that got it there. And so I'm gonna go back to the first one, where I talked about organizational drift, which is a big one. I probably could do a whole conversation on organizational drift, to be honest, because it kind of really is the trickle down effect of that. This is where your responsibility and your influence is gradually being diminished over time. And it's because the corporate goals are changing, there's a restructure in the organization, or there's a shift in the leadership focus. Or sometimes when leadership changes or the company priorities change, marginalization can happen then too, which is the corporate marginalization. So all of these things can be a part of that. And if you're not paying attention, it can happen before you know it. And then you're in this position like, how did I get here? Does that make sense? This is some good stuff. We have a LinkedIn user that says, my title was created for me, but there was no path for advancement. What do you do in these situations? Because I feel as though it's time to go. It's frustrating. What you are experiencing is what we consider a career plateau, but it also could be maybe it's we haven't gotten to the other one, which is organizational disenchantment. And so I think if your title was created for you, but there's no room for advancement, which means they never really thought about the actual career path for this person. Maybe your job was created to meet a need at that time, but not thought about where could this role go within the organization. Because sometimes we don't have leaders in these roles who have the foresight to be proactive enough to think about the career trajectory of the person they're wanting to be in the role. They just want to make sure that whatever we got to get done now, we have a person in the role that can support that. And sometimes when that happens, that could be very much the challenge. What you got to decide is if the current role that you're in and there's no advancement in that role, can you make a lateral move to another role that can also benefit your career aspirations? Or is it that you love what you do, but you want to stay up, you want to level up? Maybe, the option is, can you do something else within the organization to stay, or do you need to look at maybe going somewhere else? That's up to you. I'm not recommending what you do. I'm giving you something to think about in terms of your options. So that's something that you might want to consider. Good afternoon, Tania. Thank you for joining us. So definitely think about that. But organizational drift is something I'm going to write an article about these, because I think it's important that we think about this, because when we are riding high at work and we have success, and we know that we've got great relationships, but what happens when the organization changes? What happens when those leaders that support you are gone? You assume that you can build those relationships with the new leaders coming in, but they may not even see the value in what you're doing. And that's where the marginalization comes in. That's where the gaslighting comes in. That's where the disenchantment comes in, which takes us to the next one, which is organizational disenchantment. All right. Organizational disenchantment is this. I'm looking at my notes, okay, you all? This is when you are starting to feel let down or disappointed by the organization because you experienced a period of success or support, but now when if the changes are happening in the workplace, then it leads to a lack of support, lack of recognition, or maybe you're no longer valued. Then this is where the disillusion comes in, all right? Which means that you may no longer feel like you're in alignment, or that the company's no longer in alignment with your goals or your values. This can also lead to decreased motivation. It can also lead to decreased engagement, and also can impact your performance. All right. And so what do you do about this? Right. So I think, what do you do when there's organizational disenchantment? Yeah, you definitely have to do a reality check about where things are. You have to look at where everything is. This LinkedIn person, good point. You hit the nail on the head. I would definitely consider those things. Absolutely. So when we're going back to this organizational disenchantment, this is really all about you, the individual, not the company, but this is kind of more of your reaction or response to what you are seeing, what you are feeling, and observing within your organization when it comes to your role and how your role impacts the business. And so it's important for you to think about if you feel like that the organization no longer aligns with your values and your goals, and you're starting to see a decrease in motivation and engagement in you and how you're showing up, how you're performing, this, you really have to do a reality check about, do I want to stay, or what can I do about this? Even if there may not be anything you can do. I have been in this situation. I have been in this situation to where before I knew it, I was feeling some things, but wasn't sure what they were. That's why I always say you pay attention to the people and your environment that you work around, because it's so easy to get so caught up in your success, and then before you know it, things have shifted, and you could be in a meeting, and you and adding, offering up, solutions or ideas or what have you, where before people would listen and nobody's listening anymore. you know I love this. LinkedIn user said, I went through an organization mass layoff over a year ago due to leadership change. I was being considered to move up in the executive level by the prior CEO who left. And now as I find it difficult to even using career coaches, even interviews and offers, because of ageism and being a person of color. How do you suggest positioning myself in the instance? Yeah, so I think it is about positioning with this. And if you went through an organizational layoff a year ago, and now you're looking for you're being considered, and now that person's left, you definitely need to look at what is it that and I say don't hide anything, because you do have organizations that value your level of knowledge and expertise, and that's what you need to really go after, to be honest, right? If you feel any sort of ageism or discrimination during the interview process, you do have specific rights or things that you can, in terms of grievances and things like that. Just be careful. Be careful with those things. If you're starting to find it difficult to use coaches and get interviews and offers because of ageism or being a person of color, that's what you're protected under EEOC, especially if you're someone who is a minority and over the age of 40, right? If you feel those things, or you're experiencing those things within the interview or the offer process, and you can see it and you have evidence that it is, think about what your next step should be. But again, be very open-minded about the opportunities that you seek. Look for startups, look for consulting work, whatever it is, be open to what that looks like, because there's different ways to make a living now that necessarily doesn't always have to be corporate America. Now, I will say this, and I said this a couple of days ago, I don't need all of us to leave corporate, because we still need representation. But we also need to be able, and that's part of what BCWN does, is support to help you, give you tips and tools to navigate these things successfully, because we want you to come back and share your success stories and how you did it, so others who come behind you, guess what? You can, help them to be able to navigate it as well. So I think that is hugely important to think about. Tiny says, that's exactly where I am, like a motivation and burnout. Yeah, you might want to think about that. So again, that's for you. That's going back to that organization disenchantment. You definitely need to think about that. I'd have another same user says, companies' culture infrastructure may shift from hiring practices and impact roles within my firm department more, and safe space was minimized. Yeah, you got to think about all of these things, you all. And here's the thing, when we are doing work that we know that we have been successful and that we have been valued, guess what? Someone else is going to see that as well. And I always say you should make your name for yourself in your industry, not just on the job, because if you have to leave that job, you want to continue to stay marketable in your industry. And when you are marketable, when you have marketability, guess what? That also it can increase your income potential. You got to think about these things. He says, I also was doing multiple roles in the organization and got burnt out. Now the burnout is partially staying motivated. And if you are at that place where you are exerting your energy into staying motivated, think about all the gifts and talents you have exerted into doing multiple roles. And those are talents and gifts you now have acquired. Take those gifts and say, hey, how can I find another role, or whether it's in the organization or somewhere else, to where I can go somewhere where I am appreciated and valued. And again, that is so hard it's easier said than done, because we got bills to pay, we got kids to take care of for those who have children or families or what have you. But again, if you stay in that place of disenchantment or being disillusioned, it's going to wear on your mental health. So it's important for you to make some decisions on, take some breather and make some decisions on what it is you want to do. Now, Tahani, I hope I'm saying your name right. I do not want to mess that up. She says, especially when you're a high performer and being overlooked, how can you stay motivated when it's not good enough? Only because you are not the right color or gender. I have watched people who are doing below bare minimum and they are promoted. It's very frustrating. Yes. And Tahani, when you are in a position like that, when you know that the work you do is not being valued, I always say you have to go where you can grow. Now, I'm not telling you to do this because I don't want you to say, go back and say, oh, Sherry told me I need to quit my job. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that you do need to consider what is right for you. Okay. You have to consider what type of environment is best for you to thrive in. What type of leader do you want to work under that can help support your career aspirations? What type of, not just the company and their objectives and making sure it's all alignment with you, but just overall, is everything a good fit? Are you working in a place where you know you're someone who's sociable, that you can have good working relationships and not just coming to work and it feels like you're working in a zombie land? You know what I mean? So you have to consider what's right for you. And if it's not serving you, then you've got some decisions you need to make. Okay. So I think that's important to understand that we all have choices, whether we choose to believe that or not. And Tiani, she said, okay, the Linda said, yeah, that's exactly why I left my role. Exactly. She says, girl, I'm 1 foot out the door. I'm exhausted. I want to represent, but man, help a sister out. I know, right? You really had to take that time. I'm really glad that we had this conversation. Do have one more I want to share, but I want to get through some of these comments. Yvonne says, also, what leadership miss most times is that when this happens, the entire team morale demises. Yes, it does. People, because peers are observing how you are being treated, and they could be next. This is so true. And it does. And I think sometimes they just don't care because they get so caught up in trying to make sure they're meeting the company objectives that really the casualties are the people who are helping them meet the objectives. Yes, all these roles lead to poor leadership at the end of the day. Not only do all these roles lead to poor leadership at the end of the day, Yvonne, but they also lead to poor performance, poor team morale, toxic workplace culture, all of the things, to be honest. All of these things we talked about. Tiani says, yes. She says, okay. Oh, Tahani, thank you. Because I just want to make sure I got that right, girl. Okay, I'm going to check up my name. She said, I've been following you for years. I'm glad to see you're still helping us on this platform. I'm proud of you. You're absolutely right. I'm currently looking, but definitely weighing my options. Yes, weigh your options, okay? This is real talk. And I think I'm going to cover this again. I know I have a part 2 because we're going to talk about the other parts about what do you do. But the LinkedIn user says, I started my own consulting business after layoff over the years to offset looking for another role. It has not been easy, but all it does is help me stay motivated. Yes, being an entrepreneur is a lot of work. You can control more. But I always say part of BCWN is that we all cannot leave our day jobs or corporate America, and not all of us want to be entrepreneurs. Love what you're doing, because I'm in that space too, but we can't leave. All of us can't leave. We need representation in these spaces because we want to be able to support the women who are coming behind us. So I think that's so important. So important. All right, so I want to make sure I get to this last one, which is cultural shift. Okay, that was the last one after disenchantment, is the cultural shift. And here's the thing with cultural shift, right? Cultural shift changes when, and it goes back to what Yvonne was saying, right? When an employee starts to feel unsupported or devalued, a culture change really starts with leadership. And here's the thing, when you change leaders and a new leader comes in, a lot of times the company may change the strategy, or there may be market pressures from someplace, maybe business market pressures, maybe they got to meet numbers. When these things change, okay, when a culture shift changes and is no longer in alignment with who you are, all right, you may feel left behind, you may feel disconnected from where the organization is going because they're not bringing you in to hear your opinions, your values, and what you're wanting. All of these things break it down together, all right? So I'm going to say this: shifts and drifts in the workplace. I'm probably going to change the title when we do part 2. Corporate marginalization, organizational drifts, career plateau, and really corporate gaslighting. I would say corporate marginalization and gaslighting, we put them all in the same one together. Organizational disenchantment and cultural shifts. Okay, all of these things can create shifts and drifts in the workplace, can also impact you as a professional. And here's the thing, if you're not paying attention, guess what? You are going to get hit in the face hard because the reality is going to come. You're going to be like, how did I go from being this rock star to now nobody wants to even value what the hell I'm saying or doing, right? And so you have to pay attention to what is going on. So when you, and here are the three things you need to start to really pay attention that can help you make decisions. The first one is if there's a company change, right? Leadership change, organizational restructure, what that looks like, that's one. The next one is, well, I said them all in one, didn't I? Restructure, leadership changes, organizational changes, all of those things. When you start to see that, right? If there is high turnover in your organization and there are leaders coming in and out like a revolving door, or individual contributors or frontline leaders, all if you have high attrition, and attrition, for those who know in HR know what I'm saying, high turnover in the organization, that is a red flag that more than likely these things could happen if you are not paying attention. And even if you are proactive to stay ahead of trying to build the relationships and connections so they can see where your value and things like that, it still may not work, because they are being told, the new people coming in, especially leaders, are coming in and being given directives of things they want, that leaders are wanting them to take care of, do, accomplish, achieve, shift, change, drift, shift. You get what drift? You know what I'm saying? And and you may not even be part of that. Even if they're coming in and you're spoke highly of, doesn't necessarily mean that they still see value in how to collaborate with you. So again, those shifts and drifts in the workplace can be something else. I mean, really. LinkedIn user says, I have a personal company, but I also have to work. So I'm currently looking for anything to support my company to build it out. All right. It says, do you host events in person? Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, we're about to do a fall winter workshop series. And so with that, it's going to be, I did a vote within the BCWN LinkedIn page, and a lot of people asked for it to be hybrid. So we're going to have it in person, but also have a virtual aspect to it. It's going to be my first time doing them together, y'all. Help me, help a girl out. Okay, we're going to see how this goes. But I'm so excited about the workshop series that we're going to do, because we are going to be talking about these things that we were talking about today in terms of these shifts and drifts in the workplace. LinkedIn users has agreed, I didn't have a choice, but I'm still trying to find another role where I'm valued and the culture strategies embrace employees is strong within leadership. Keep looking, they're out there, but you do have to be very selective on where you land. Partners and acquisitions, you're right about that. They can shift and drift things in the workplace very easily. And the LinkedIn users, I'm grateful for, I saw this live session popped up on my LinkedIn. I did not know about you, but thank you. Please keep doing what you do. Oh, you're so welcome. Yes. For those of you, in what state, the LinkedIn user? I am in Cincinnati, Ohio. So this is where the in-person will be, but we're going to do it hybrid. So we'll have the in-person and the virtual aspect of it as well. So just look out for it. We're going to post it on our LinkedIn page of when when registration will open to be a part of that. So just to wrap this up again, he says, Christina Monk, I would love to connect. Oh, great. Look at that. I love when people connect within our Career Tip Tuesdays. It's so great to do that. She says, we both seem to align our focus on strategic strategy leadership, which is so important. And you'll be surprised how many leaders do not come into a place of being strategic like that, or being inclusive leaders that understand how powerful a dynamic team can be within the workplace. Yvonne, yes, please connect with Yvonne on LinkedIn. And we would love for you all to go to our website, which is bcwnetwork.com, and also download our mobile app. We have a mobile app, which is our part of our community, to where we offer resources and community with women all in our mobile app. So please, you can find it on the App Store or Google Play and get connected. We have all our videos. This is where we also house all of our Career Tip Tuesday replays as well. We have downloads. We have events that we do. We have our video on demand. We have our job search toolkit. We have our professional development toolkit, group coaching. We have a mentoring program, all the things, you all. But I love coming on here on Career Tip Tuesday every other week and talking to all of you. All right. Letitia says, thank you, the thing and the shedding light to see these conversations. Absolutely. And yes, follow everybody. Everybody follow each other, okay? And you can also follow me and Sherry Sims and LinkedIn as well. Would love to connect with you all. And if you're not following our LinkedIn page, follow that as well. All right, really be quick before we go. I'm going to go ahead and just round off these shifts and drifts in the workplace. First one is corporate marginalization, organizational drift, career plateau, corporate gaslighting, organizational disenchantment, and cultural shift. So I hope this was helpful for you all. So in 2 weeks, we'll be back and we'll do part 2 about giving you some tips on how you recognize and deal with these in the workplace, especially if you love where you work, but just kind of like, really trying to make some decisions. So until then, you all have an amazing rest of your work week, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye, everybody.